Hey, FreightWaves fans and friends, welcome to Thursday edition on FreightWaves Now. We are so excited about what is happening right now. We have got not only a developing weather situation, which you can be excited about that or not, but we have two economists. They're going to give us, well, the bad news first, so that we can end on the good news. So, and you know what we're gonna do to do this? We're gonna show you on our Sonar platform all this interesting, compelling, relevant information about what is happening right now. If you wanna ever check out Sonar, check it out on freightwaves.com/sonar, and we'll give you a demo. Nick, how you doing?
Hey Chad, I'm doing great.
Great. Are you so excited about the disruptions in weather happening right now?
Well, not really. I'm excited to talk about the weather, but I don't like that it's going to cause problems.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
There's severe weather moving through the south, and we actually had some tornado reports yesterday from the Texas Panhandle up into parts of Kansas. A lot of wind and hail damage across Texas up into the Central Plains, and that's all shifting eastward today and into tonight.
Tornadoes in Kansas, crazy.
Crazy, yeah. Never happens, right? No. But, well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because really in the last 10 to 20 years, a lot of the major severe weather events and tornadoes have actually kind of shifted from what we traditionally know as Tornado Alley, from Texas up into Kansas and Nebraska and Missouri, and it's been shifting eastward actually into parts of the Tennessee River Valley, the lower Mississippi River Valley. And so it's been kind of dubbed Dixie Alley in the last several years, because a lot of that severe weather has been shifting eastward. They still get tornadoes and severe weather out in the plains, but a lot of it's been kind of moving eastward towards where we are headquartered here in Chattanooga, other parts of the Gulf Coast states.
Wow, well, they don't call you a chief meteorologist for nothing. Wow, that's an interesting trend. What is happening right now with disruptions?
Now, Louisiana, up into Arkansas, across Mississippi, Alabama, all the deep south, the Gulf Coast states, even some parts of Tennessee this afternoon, western Tennessee, those are the target zones for severe weather. We're talking about potential for more tornadoes, also potential for more damaging winds, large hail, a lot of heavy rain from time to time. The I-20, I-10 corridors, I-55, I-65, these are going to be the major interstates where drivers are really going to be delayed and are under the gun for the severe weather today. And then for the overnight drivers, it kind of shifts a little more eastward into western Florida, across Alabama, including Montgomery, maybe Huntsville, and up towards Nashville and here in Chattanooga too during the overnight hours. So, and as I mentioned yesterday, it's really important for drivers to understand that they may be driving in an area, as you know, the system kind of steps just gradually eastward over a period of time of 12 to 24 hours. So a driver could be going through one area where there's not much going on, and then suddenly, just in the matter of minutes, they could run into a severe storm, suddenly torrential rain, just blinding you. You can't see anything in front of you.
Like microbursts, is that what they call them?
Sometimes they could contain microbursts or just really strong, what they call straight line winds, where that cold, dense air from the top of the thunderstorm is just rushing right down to the ground, and it has nowhere to go but to spread outward. And so things kind of get flattened and toppled over. Wow. And that can happen really suddenly, as well as the heavy rainfall. So drivers just have to be aware that there could be very sudden changes in the weather like that from one place to another with the threat of severe storms.
Okay, well, thank you, Nick. Thank you for that.
Should we look at road conditions real quick?
We should, if you are ready to do that. I'm always excited to look at road conditions.
Why don't we go ahead and do that, because it's a great feature on Sonar, and it's interesting just to kind of see, as I mentioned, as the whole system kind of just steps eastward, a little, just gradually over several hours and into the overnight, into the day tomorrow, that, a lot of the major interstates kind of turn blue here on the road conditions product, which indicates a lot of wet roads. Not just the interstates, but also the secondary routes as well. And there is a potential for flash flooding in spots with these storms too, so that could cause temporary roadblocks. There might be areas here and there where drivers might not be able to get through once they get off the interstates, because the secondary roads tend to flood first before the interstates will.
Okay, well, thank you for that update.
You bet.
Stay safe out there, all you drivers. And now we are going to segue. We have got two economists in the house today. It's kind of crazy, I know. And we decided, there's a little not so great news and a little maybe positive news. And like if you're like me, I like to hear the bad news first. Ibrahim Bayan, you're our bad cop today.
Good afternoon, Chad. How are you doing?
Welcome here. Why don't you give it to us?
Yeah, so I just wanted to start a little by digging into trade patterns, which has been one of the weaker areas in the economy over the last several months. I just want to start with goods exports. This is goods export growth year over year. And you can see here that exports really peaked in the middle part of last year, and growth was around 15% year over year, just slightly under 15%. And ever since then, it's been trending slightly down, registering as low as 2.6% after turning negative briefly at the end of last year.
I see a couple of things. First of all, too, as we're looking at this goes way back, even beyond 5 years, which we often do, right? So, of course, we've got that 2016 trough. And this is, good. Okay, good exports year over year. Huh.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
It doesn't really look so bad.
No, absolutely. And in fact, there was a bit of news that looked almost positive on its face that came out yesterday. Like there was the trade deficit got narrower, exports grew, imports also grew. So this is good news for the economy overall. It's also good news for freight movements, generally speaking. Okay. But the thing is, when you dig into some of the details of the export numbers, it's a little less positive. Like most of the gain in exports in yesterday's release was really driven by just commercial aircraft exports. So it was all just things like Boeing commercial aircraft that got exported to the rest of the world. And once you strip that out, you're really not looking at much export growth beyond that. And so, it looks good on its face, but not so good once you dig into the details there. And it's really not good news for the overall manufacturing sector. I mean, when you think about like manufacturing demand and what drives manufacturing activity, there's domestic demand, but there's also a good chunk of it that gets driven by exports that go to the rest of the world. So if export performance isn't doing well, it puts downward pressure on manufacturing activity in the economy overall.
Okay, and that is maybe not, that's a little suppressed right now?
No, absolutely. And in fact, you can see here we have industrial production for manufacturing, and this is year over year growth also.
Okay.
And you can see, just like exports, there was really a spike in growth in industrial production in the middle part of last year, and it's been trending down ever since then. And as of March, it's at basically 1% year over year in terms of growth in manufacturing activity. And so again, you get the weakness in the export side. Domestic activity is also not doing terribly well, at least not during the first quarter of the year, but it puts downward pressure on all the manufacturing activity in the economy.
Is this because, now I'm trying to be a little positive here, even as we're seeing some of this negative, is it because of the weather headwinds, the tariff headwinds, some of the other factors going on of the unknown kind of keeping things a little suppressed, and maybe we really are going to see a trend upwards at least into the next quarter?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think it's exactly that. Like, there were a lot of things going on in the first quarter that I think helped restrain activity, both on the trade side and the manufacturing side. You had the government shutdown, you had weather, and you also had poor retail performance in the early part of the year, and all of that just combined puts downward pressure during the first quarter. I think some of those temporary things are going to subside, and so as a result, you should see some better growth. I don't think it gets to the almost 4% growth that we saw the middle part of last year. I do think it gets better from where we are right now.
We would be hard pressed to achieve what we had last year, right? That was definitely an anomaly.
And so that's the export side. On the import side, things also look fairly weak. I mean, when you're looking at, say, goods export growth year over year, that's also been trending down after a peak in sort of the middle part of last year. You can see this is goods imports
We're going to get our
baseline
adjusted to 0, so it's not quite as dramatic there. We're not going straight to hell.
Sure, but you can see over 10% growth in the middle part of last year, like in the third quarter of last year, and then down ever since then. And now we're back into negative territory for goods imports at negative 1% basically year over year.
That is some bad news.
And that's the first time it's gone negative since that stretch in 2015 and 2016 where imports fell significantly. Now again, there's some temporary factors that I think that are at play here.
Yeah.
Part of the reason there was a surge in the third quarter of last year is because companies were trying to import more to avoid tariffs that they thought were coming into place at the beginning of the year.
Right.
And so once you get to the other side, you get some weakness in imports just because they imported it earlier than they otherwise might have. And so, like the manufacturing sector, which I think is going to improve, I also think imports are going to improve a bit going forward as well. If you kind of just ignore the strength of how strong this peak was, and consider that that's contributing to how weak things are right now, you take like the average of the two, imports are slowing down, but I don't think it's nearly as dramatic as say this negative 1% might suggest.
I'm going to ask a kind of an overview question. I don't know the extent to which, hindsight is 2020, I don't know the extent to which you can answer it, but I remember in the middle of last year, around this time, and it was the capacity crunch, and it was crazy, and rates were so high, and we were beginning to think, oh, the pendulum's not going to keep swinging back and forth. This is the new normal. Now, you as a chief economist here at FreightWaves could and so well they start buying trucks, right? They start buying trucks to add to that capacity, and sure enough, now things are swinging back. Could you have predicted this trend? And I don't mean to so you toot your own horn, but were you too caught up in the excitement, and was it feeling like we were going to remain elevated for a while? Were we just prisoners of the moment, as Zach Strickland likes to say?
So I mean, I think it was pretty clear last year, even when all the activity was going well, that it wasn't going to last. And I remember one of the earliest webinars that I gave on the state of the economy was right in the middle of the strongest part of this expansion.
Okay.
And I remember saying at the time, a lot of this is because there was tax cuts this year, and there are a lot of things moving in the right direction to help boost things. Those things aren't going to last, and so you expect growth to kind of die down. I mean, the problem is, not everybody listens to economists when they talk, and so sometimes an economist may warn, and people might not. And what you find actually is when businesses are thinking about hiring or ordering new trucks, the main thing that they look at is just what just happened or what's happening right now in my industry. And so they're making their hiring decisions based on their performance over the last quarter or the performance over the last several months. Yes. And I think a lot of companies probably looked at the strength that existed in the middle part of last year and said, we need to add more capacity to the market. And so now you find yourself into the situation that you just described, where the pendulum has kind of swung back and the activity has died down, and we've already added all this capacity into the industry. And so what's going to happen to all that capacity? It just kind of sits idle as demand dies down.
Fair enough. I mean, you've got one more slide to show us.
Sure. So the one thing I wanted to add is, again, I don't know if all of this weakness is going to necessarily continue throughout the rest of the year. So here I have instituted supply management indicators, both for new import orders and new export orders. Now, the ISM index is a diffusion index, which basically means that the response is the percentage of respondents that say that activity is expanding.
Yes.
So anything above 50 means expansion. Once it falls below 50, it's usually a sign of contraction in the sector. So.
And you've got us with all these. You've got us pulled up with these year over year, 5-year spreads.
Sure, just to give some perspective to how low it can actually go.
What have you got it cross compared with?
So this is the white line here is the new export orders, and then the orange line is the new import orders that manufacturers are reporting. Okay. So if you look at the export order line, you can see it's also been trending down, just like exports overall have been trending down, and it's been hovering barely above expansionary territory. So very consistent with the 2 to 3% growth that we've seen year over year on goods exports in the economy. The orange line, which is the import order side, it also tailed down, but it's jumped back up as recently as March. And so this is part of the reason why I think imports are going to begin to pick back up. The export sector is going to be challenged because global growth isn't doing very well. And until global growth picks up, it's hard to imagine exports really growing at a rapid pace. But the import side should get a bit of a benefit as some of the temporary things that are holding down growth in the U.S. economy start to subside. So I think you'll start to see better import numbers going forward, even if export numbers don't quite get as strong. Okay. One of the things to keep an eye on is the state of retail, the state of manufacturing, and as growth in those things begin to pick up, you should start to see better import growth from the rest of the world. So.
Hey, all right, thank you, Ibrahim Bayan, chief economist here at FreightWaves. And you know what? I can respect him giving us the bad news and trying to end on a positive note. If that's the bad news, I think we can live with that. Anthony Smith, how are you?
I'm well, and how are you, Chad?
Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
And so you're giving us the good news.
A little bit of good news.
A little bit of good news.
Okay. So the U.S. Census Bureau recently released their retail sales for March. And so we see here that we have a 3.6 increase compared to March of 2018. And so this is really good news when we're looking at the first quarter overall for retail sales. One thing to note was that there was a pretty sharp drop in December and some lackluster results for February. So when we see this rise in in March, this is something that's really promising for overall consumer activity.
I remember we were surprised by the dip, to learn about the actual dip that happened in December when it seemed like the results were positive at the time. Right. So yeah, okay, so since then we've been trending up. You've got us looking at also is it about a 5-year, going back to 2015?
Around a 5-year, 4-year look here. And what this is really promising for is the overall freight activity. So we just heard what Ibrahim had to say, but this is going to be something that's promising because when we look at goods moving across the country, it's going to be powered by the U.S. consumer. And one of the things that we spoke about last time was that the U.S. consumer makes up so much of the U.S. GDP portion.
Is it about 2/3?
Over about 2/3, so somewhere around 66, 67%. And so when we're looking at that much activity, we're really going to be eyeing what the U.S. consumer is doing. And so when we're looking at U.S. retail sales, this is something that it is a little promising for the first quarter of 2019, and something that we're going to be keeping our eyes on as we go out throughout the year.
Fan-stinkin-tastic. Is this our big good news? Do you have another slide or anything for us?
This is our big good news, and so while we are excited about this, we are expecting U.S. retail sales to moderate throughout the remainder of the year. So positive news overall. When we stripped out automotive and gasoline sales, it was still positive. We saw that there was a 1.6 roughly increase from February of 2019. Great news. And when we look at the year over year, it's still good news. So we're excited, we're optimistic that the U.S. consumer is active and will continue to support the overall U.S. economy, but we are expecting some moderation as we move on throughout the year.
Thank you so much. Almost all of the information is coming in. We still have a little bit of delay because of the government shutdown, but most of the first quarter results are in terms of what we're seeing from the economic outlook. And considering the weather, the tariffs, even the government shutdown and some of those headwinds, it's and coming off the crazy hot 2018. Really not that bad. I'm going to put my positive spin on it. Pretty interesting results, and I am optimistic that as this summer is coming in and spring is sprung, we are going to continue to be trending up. But we will keep an eye on it day by day as we bring it to you each and every business day at 4 o'clock, coming live to you from Freight Alley in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thanks for joining us here. We're very near where our Transparency 19 event is going to be, and right now people are signing up for it. It's like it's hockey sticking, as they say. We are getting more and more people registering because everybody recognizes it's a cool, hot event and you want to be a part of it. Everyone wants to be a part of the happening thing. So we would love to see you there. So check it out. If you don't already know where to look, FreightWaves.com/Transparency19. And it's also on our events thing. You can check it out there. So thanks for tuning in here on Thirsty Thursday, and we will see you on Good Friday tomorrow. And check us out, on Instagram, YouTube channel, social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere that you like to go and share the love. In the meantime, don't worry, be happy.